All right, everybody, welcome. Class is officially in session today. So I already gave you a hint about what I was going to be talking about. I do have a blog post up that coincides with this video as well, give you a better perspective on things. So let's just get right into business and talk about what we will be discussing today. And today's topic is not only criminal fraud, but that all debt is not dischargeable. You see, and that's a common belief that you could just file for bankruptcy and eliminate all debt. That's not the case. Okay, certain debts, of course, credit cards, personal loans, foreclosures, deficiency judgments, all that can be wiped out in bankruptcy. But not all debt. That includes taxes and everything else. So let's go over what can and cannot be included. And first, let's tie it into the case of G. Herbo. Now, I'll be the first one to admit not my kind of music, so I had no idea who G Herbo was. But look him up. Pretty successful rapper. He's done. I think he's got three hits in the Billboard 100. But recently, he pled guilty to criminal fraud. So that's going to be the first thing you're going to look at. If you have criminal fraud cases, court fines, stuff like that, that's not going to be dischargeable in bankruptcy. But it doesn't end there. There are other types of debt as well. Domestic support obligations. What is that? Simply alimony and child support. So this idea that, oh, I owe $20,000 in child support, or the obligors $20,000 in child support, they'll just file for bankruptcy. You can go ahead and file for bankruptcy, but it's not going to wipe out either one of these debts. That's why it's very important that when you're writing as a lawyer, you're preparing a marital settlement agreement, that the wording is perfect, because if the wording in any way hints that the payments being received are for alimony or child support, and there are issues later on with that client, then that's not going to be dischargeable in bankruptcy. So keep that in mind when marital settlement agreements are being written, or if you're getting divorced yourself, you got to make sure what that marital agreement says, because it could affect bankruptcy down the road. Now, student loans is the obvious one, right? We cannot eliminate student loans in bankruptcy. Things are changing. The Biden administration is doing debt cancellation, which is or debt forgiveness, let's say, which is a whole other issue in itself. But they are making tweaks, trying to see who they can oppose in bankruptcy and who they cannot. So the process has changed. Now, if you're trying to discharge student loans in bankruptcy, it goes through the Department of Education first. They see whether they're going to oppose it or not, and they don't, then it makes life easier for you. But just understand, as a general rule, student loans are not going to be dischargeable. Now, the other issue is also secured debt. A lot of times clients say, well, I owe whatever, $10,000 on my car, so if I file for bankruptcy, I get rid of that debt. No, you're going to get rid of that debt only if you surrender the car to the trustee and you don't own the car anymore. But if you're going to keep driving that car, or you're going to keep living in your home, then secured debt is not going to get wiped out in bankruptcy. So keep that in mind. The next issue we have to talk about is taxes. Not all taxes are dischargeable in bankruptcy. There's certain exceptions to that. It gets a little complicated. I wouldn't even try that if I were you without a lawyer involved. But for the most part, just assume that if you owe IRS back taxes, it's going to have to get paid. There's nothing you can do about that when it comes to bankruptcy. And of course, the other issue is just debt that's not listed. So this gets a little complicated too, based on what's part of the bankruptcy estate. But bottom line is, if you didn't list a debt, chances are it's not going to be discharged. There are exceptions, like I just mentioned. Basically, if there's nothing part of the bankruptcy estate, meaning there's no assets to divide or anything like that, then that's not going to it's not going to be an issue. But if there's assets that were going to be received by the creditor, then you're not going to be able to discharge that debt. You have to reopen the case and everything else, and then it gets a little complicated. Now, I do want to distinguish between car crashes. If I crash into your car, can I file for bankruptcy to get rid of that debt? Let's say the car accident was for $30,000 in damages, but I only have a $10,000 policy, so there's $20,000 there that I'm short. Could I file for bankruptcy and eliminate that? Yes, absolutely. That's not going to be an issue. It's common, because from here, what happens is your driver's license gets suspended. And then, of course, if you get caught driving without a license, that's a criminal infraction case. And it's just a snowball effect there where things start to get worse. But just understand that if it's a car crash and nothing else, you could wipe that out in bankruptcy. It will protect Same thing as always, wage garnishments, liens being placed on your property by lawyers, and more importantly, you get to keep your license. The problem is right here. If there was a DUI involved, then you're not going to be able to wipe that out in bankruptcy. So if the DUI is part of the accident, the damages associated with that, that's not going to be eliminated in bankruptcy. So be careful with that. Now, here's the blog post from today, and it pertains to Rudy Giuliani, who's filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago. Willful and malicious injury. Now, let's explain that too. We can even explain that back to with the car accident. If I get involved in a car accident, that's just called a negligence case, right? That's all it is. Simple negligence. It's an accident. What if I purposely tried to hit your car? That's malicious. That is willful. That is not going to be eliminated in bankruptcy. So when we have the case of Rudy Giuliani, we're dealing with that issue now where the question is the defamation lawsuit that he's involved in, could that be eliminated in bankruptcy? And then my answer is no, it cannot. But he's facing that issue right now. So this is the blog post that I wrote about today, where an adversary proceeding has been filed against him. And so what is an adversary proceeding? Simple enough, it is proceeding to determine if certain debt can be discharged in bankruptcy. So imagine you had one of these cases here. Let's just say you had a car accident, then the question is, was this done on purpose, or was this just a typical, negligence case where we don't have to worry about it, and that is dischargeable in bankruptcy. But if it's willful and malicious, then it's not going to get discharged in bankruptcy. And even oddly enough, and you'll see it in that blog post, Giuliani signed a stipulation, so basically an agreement, saying that his acts were willful and malicious. So how he's going to get rid of that in bankruptcy, I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen, but that's where we are today. So you can tie in Giuliani's case to your case, not necessarily willful and malicious, I hope not, but you can tie it into all these issues right here on when not all debts are dischargeable in bankruptcy. All right, so take care. Make sure to read today's blog post regarding Giuliani so you can get a better understanding of what's going on. Now, of course, as always, you can send me an email if you you have a question for me. You want me to post it in the Readers Questions Forum, by all means. And of course, if you're a paralegal and you already have you're using my textbook in your courses, go back to the blog. It will give you better insight and further explain the whole process. Or if you're an up-and-coming lawyer, even a paralegal, and you're trying to understand the bankruptcy process, my textbook goes through actual fact, real-life scenarios where I go through the entire bankruptcy petition from A to Z. I show you how to deal with everything that comes with filing for bankruptcy. And finally, if you want to find me on social media, you can hit me up on Twitter or X, Alex. You see there, do the underscore BKC Prof, short for professor. And of course, you can find me on Facebook. I have my business page set up. Just look up Bankruptcy Blog. You should have no problems finding me. All right. So have a good rest of your day, everybody. It's Monday. Wake up, have some coffee, and let's go ahead and tackle this week. Take care, everybody.